This is Mrs. Hall, and we're going to be looking at Lesson 1-4, Social Cognitive Theories of Personality Development. And if you remember back to Psych 1, we learned about the different perspectives, and we're still using those perspectives today to learn about our development of our personality. The social cognitive theory, we never really called it social cognitive theory. In Psych 1, we called it behaviorism. So as we look at the social cognitive theories, we're going to mostly be focusing on B.F. Skinner's idea of operant conditioning and Albert Bandura's theory of social learning, or what we called observational learning. And instead of just looking at the environment now, we're going to be focusing more on how our cognitions and how our thoughts affect our behaviors because of the things that happen in our environment. Starting with Skinner's idea of operant conditioning, we learned a lot about this in Psych 1. The reinforcements and the punishments that we receive in our lives affect our behavior. We tend to do things that bring us a pleasurable outcome or a favorable outcome, and we tend to avoid doing things that will bring us a negative outcome. We use the terms reinforcements and punishments. If you remember, reinforcements will cause a behavior to be more likely to occur again in the future, and punishments will cause a behavior to be less likely to occur again in the future. Now, applying this to personality, if you think about the traits that you have, according to the operant conditioning theory, where would those have come from? Well, they would have come from those behaviors that were reinforced. So think about introversion and extroversion, being shy versus being outgoing. If you are reinforced or rewarded for being outgoing, you're going to tend to be more outgoing because it brings you a favorable outcome. Now, this is just according to Skinner and operant conditioning theory, that you would be more outgoing because you're reinforced for it, as opposed to being punished or being mocked on or laughed at or whatever you want to think of as being a punishment for being outgoing. That can then cause a person to become more introverted or more shy, quiet, that sort of a thing, and then they're avoiding that negative outcome, so they're receiving some negative reinforcement. They might not be getting a reward like, here you go, we really like you, but they're not being bullied, they're not being picked on, that sort of a thing, and so it will then negatively reinforce that personality trait of introversion. So according to this theory, our personality would be the result of our reinforcements. So consistent personality traits that we exhibit on a regular basis would be traits that have been reinforced throughout our lives, either positively or negatively reinforced. Moving on to Albert Bandura and his social learning theory, we called this observational learning, that we learn by observing other people and then mimicking their behaviors and our ability to perform behaviors of our own. Well, now, as we call it social learning theory, we're going to be looking more at how our personality is influenced by how we interact with our environment. Not just watching other people, although we do learn traits through observation, but we're learning through interacting, observing other people's behavior, and then receiving feedback for that behavior as we try to mimic it ourselves. So the environment doesn't necessarily determine our behavior as it does in operant conditioning, but now we are able to actually interact with it. And we can observe not only face-to-face, direct observation, but it can also be observing through the media, or observing through the things that we read or the things that we hear about, things like that. It doesn't have to just be observing face-to-face. One of the key concepts in Bandura's social learning theory is the idea of self-efficacy, different than self-esteem. Self-esteem is how we feel about ourselves. Self-efficacy is our belief about our ability to perform behaviors that should lead to those expected outcomes. How confident are we that we can do something that will bring us a reward? If we have high self-efficacy, it means that we have confidence that we can do whatever it takes to receive whatever that reinforcer is that we're trying to receive. If we have low self-efficacy, it means that we worry that we might not be able to receive the reinforcer. Whatever it is that we're being asked to do might be too difficult for us, and we might not be able to do that particular task, whatever it is. Now, our self-efficacy can waver depending on what we're asked to do. It's not always high. It's not just that a person has high self-efficacy all the time. It can be low depending on what we're asked to do. For example, Right this minute, if you were to ask me to go run a marathon, I have very low self-efficacy that I would be able to finish a marathon today. But if you were to ask me to teach students about psychology, I have very high self-efficacy in my ability to be able to teach students psychology concepts and help them to learn those concepts. The other thing about self-efficacy that you need to understand is that it's subjective. The person being asked to do the task is the one who gets to determine whether they have high or low self-efficacy. I can believe something about you. I can have confidence in your ability to do something. But if you don't have that confidence, then you're going to have low self-efficacy. That's why it's called self-efficacy. My belief about your ability can influence your belief. And again, we're back to that interaction with our environment, but I can't give you high self-efficacy just because I believe in you. You have to be able to do that on your own. So obviously, in order to have a healthy personality, we're going to want to have high self-efficacy in as many of our tasks that we're asked to do as possible. We find that we can foster this in childhood. We can help to raise a child to have high self-efficacy throughout their lives, and that can then influence their personality by allowing them the opportunity to succeed on their own. Don't intervene too soon for a child to help them do whatever it is. When we do that, when we intervene too soon with a child, it gives them the idea that I can't do this on my own. I need someone's help, and that's going to actually foster low self-efficacy. Instead, you want to encourage a child to believe they can do this, whatever it is, and they don't need your help as much as they think they might. So I like the picture on the left here. It's okay, Dad, I got this. I can handle this on my own. I can hit the ball. I don't need your help. You don't need to intervene. That's what's going to foster high self-efficacy. Now, a person with high self-efficacy, in terms of behavioral personality traits, we're going to see these people show greater success in tackling any sort of life challenge that requires any sort of discipline. For example, exercising, dieting, some sort of rehab treatment, something that involves the discipline to overcome some sort of a challenge, whatever it is. Keeping a positive attitude about things. And you can see on the right-hand side in the picture what our high self-efficacy influences. It influences the choices we make, the effort we put into the things that we're asked to do, how long we persist in the task that we're asked, and how we feel. It can influence our self-esteem, but it's not the same as self-esteem. Moving on to another social learning theorist, Julian Rotter. Julian Rotter has a term called Locus of Control. Locus means center. It's how we see ourselves in terms of our center of the control that we have. Are we in control of, or are we controlled by our environment? And if you look at the pictures that I included on the bottom, you'll see that we have either an internal or an external locus of control. If I have an internal locus of control, it means that I feel like I control my own destiny. I control my own fate. And you can see in the left some of the things that we believe when we have an internal locus of control. An external locus of control is the idea that chance or outside forces beyond my control determine my fate. They control my destiny, or I don't have control over my environment. Things just happen to me, instead of an internal locus of control where I am in control and I make things happen for myself. Obviously, again, we're going to want an internal locus of control to promote a more healthy personality, and it's going to go along with our idea of self-efficacy. So a lot of times when we have high self-efficacy, we also see an internal locus of control. Not always, but a lot of times we do. If I have high self-efficacy, I have a high belief or high confidence that I can do whatever it is that I'm asked to do, that I can make things happen, that I can determine my own future, and I can receive the outcome that I'm looking for. I control it, as opposed to that external locus of control that there's just nothing that I can do to help myself out. Why bother? Things are just going to happen to me and I can't control it. Which can lead us to another concept that's been coined by Martin Seligman, who is actually the founder of a theory called positive psychology, but it started with his idea of learned helplessness. Learned helplessness comes from low self-efficacy, and an external locus of control. When a person feels like he doesn't have any control over his environment, no matter what he does, he never gets the positive outcome that he's looking for. What can happen over time is that the person can give up. So learned helplessness, by definition, is an idea of hopelessness or a passive resignation that is learned when a person is unable to avoid repeated aversive or negative events that are coming from the environment. An example would be in this picture on the bottom left here, this person who feels trapped, feels chained up, and can't do anything. This would be a student, for example, who just can't pass a test to save his life. He's done everything that he can to learn the information, or at least he thinks that he has, and no matter what, every single test that he takes in this particular class, he always fails. So over and over and over again, when that happens, you'll see some of the thoughts that go through a person's mind who's continually failed. I can't do it. Why bother? I'm not smart enough. What's the use? I'll just fail anyway. Nothing works. And this can lead to depression, like we talked about in Psych 1. When we don't feel like we have control over our environment, this is the ultimate worst thing that can happen to us, is just the idea that we give up. It might be in just one area of our life, but it could be something that becomes more global in our lives, and we just feel trapped in every area of our lives. So those are the concepts in the social cognitive theory, and just a real quick evaluation of social cognitive theory. The nice thing is that it does make our personality more scientific. When you think about what the behaviorists did, they said in order for psychology to become more scientific, we need to study things that we can see, observable behaviors. And the behaviorists believe that our behaviors are the result of our personality. So we're studying personality more scientifically than we are with the other theories that we've looked at. But as we've seen, it's very limited in our ability to explain these traits. So that's the social cognitive theory. As always, if you have questions, make sure you write them down, and we'll meet together in class and discuss them, and we'll work with them when we see each other again.